make sure that you have yourself muted if you're not speaking, just because I think we are expected to have close to 30 people here today. So before I explain how things are going to work, Julie, did you want to do a quick introduction?
Sure. I'm Julie Fine. I'm the commercial sales rep for Johnny's for Connecticut, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Vermont, and New Hampshire. And this is sort of my job to talk about varieties. So I'm really happy to be here today. See a bunch of familiar faces, people I already work with, but this is like my favorite thing. This is why I do this job, because I love talking about it. Variety choices are really complicated depending on the time of year, what you need, what your values are, what your customers want, and I just think it's so much fun. So and I guess I want to say that I participated in one of these in Eastern Mass a couple years ago, and it was just amazing to see the depth of knowledge that farmers had that they were able to share with each other. So I'm just happy to be here today. Thanks for having me.
Great. Did you want to give a short intro, Laura and Randy? Or are you okay?
Well, hey, I'm Laura. Working with Julie, supporting her as well. So just excited to hear what you guys have to say.
Great. Is Randy here with us? Maybe not. I don't know. I haven't looked through. Okay. Okay, so today I prepared some slides. These are the topics that I received from everybody. I figured I'd have each family. These are all the topics grouped by family, and I'm gonna have each family up on a slide so that we can see what topics were submitted. It doesn't have to go in order, but if you have anything to say, if you could raise your hand on Zoom. Does everyone know how to raise your hand? You click on participants and it shows a flashing hand. Once you're selected and you speak and you're finished speaking, just make sure you've canceled that hand. If you don't want to speak, or if it's a quick comment, you can just leave a comment, and Will or Mira will be looking at every entry, looking at every message, and will alert me if there's any questions or comments that needs to be discussed. And I really encourage everyone to raise their hands and share with everybody your experience with different varieties that we'll be talking about today. And lastly, MC will be taking notes today, so we will make that available along with the recorded discussion after this. All right, so let me just share my screen. Wow, it's taking forever to load. Okay, can everyone see this? So yeah, I have the minutes here for every sort of family slide. This is just for guidance, just to make sure we have enough time to go through all the topics. So hopefully I don't have to cut anyone off, but if we do go way beyond what I wrote here, then I will have to get us moving to the next topic. So yeah, we'll start off with lettuce, and yeah, who wants to start the discussion? Sorry, I need to find I'm not ready to see the hand. How do I find the hands?
Yoko, I'm thinking with the screen share, it might be kind of hard to
See the
screens. So we might just want to see how it works to have people just jump in and.
Okay, yeah, let's do that, because yeah, I don't know how to show the hands thing. All right. Oops. Hold on. So what I found, I guess I'll start. What I found on the Johnny's catalog is that, for varieties, it tells you which varieties are really tolerant to heat and, bolting, but there's not a lot of information about which lettuces are tolerant to cold. So I wanted to see which lettuce varieties work for you guys in terms of being able to withstand colder temperatures. And the asterisk, by the way, means that there are multiple entries for that. So there were multiple farmers that were interested in that topic, including myself. So if you guys have any comments?
Yoko, it's Susan. In my experience, just this past fall, Alkindus, which is Alkindus from Johnny's, I don't even know.
Yeah.
I get most of my lettuce from Johnny. So yeah, Alkindus actually held up under row cover for me longer than Nevada, which is another one that I use a lot of.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else?
I would second your experience with Alkindus.
With the for the summer, this is Elliot. Hi. The Cherokee, I feel like that kind of just will just sit there for like several weeks, and you can like harvest it when it's small, or you can harvest it when it's big, and it's sort of pretty good. It's not great, but it's like good. And then into the fall, it kind of just like it just sort of like chills under row cover. And then also like for a little teeny head like that Rook's High or Ruhai,
Yeah.
Rouxhai, like that really just sits there, and like that held up pretty well.
Teresa at Huntsbrook Farm. So last year we worked with 2-star into the winter. We changed this year. We did Muir, and outside Muir with row cover, we harvested right up until, I'm sorry, I don't have my notes on it, but I will say that in our high tunnel and I believe uncovered, we harvested right up until like about a week ago, and it probably could have gone more. I think we planted a little early, and so it was sizing up. It had gotten too big, and so we had to just harvest it. But Muir worked really well in the high tunnel as a head lettuce because we do a lot of head lettuce. That's all I have.
Hi, this is Hannah. We grow this variety called Hungarian Winter Pink I think it's from Adaptive, which is really, really nice this time of year. It's like a butter lettuce. It just doesn't hold up super great post-harvest, I would say, because it's so delicate. But in terms of surviving outside in the cold, it does really well.
Sorry, what was the name?
Hungarian Winter Pink.
Okay. Any other cold tolerant lettuces?
Hey Yoko, it's Kirsten. I don't know how to actually get my screen to show, I don't think.
Oh, you're showing.
Oh, okay. We inadvertently left 2 green head lettuces, Nancy and Adriana, under a row cover, and they ended up doing extremely well. Even when we took the row cover off to try and kill them off, they ended up still surviving pretty well with the freezes that we had. Skyphos and Red Cross, which are 2 red head lettuces, did pretty well also. So that's something to consider. We don't do much cut greens. We're starting to, so I can't really help with that. But as far as head lettuce goes, those 4 did extremely well. And I'm gonna say with Teresa, Muir held up pretty well also under row cover.
Yeah, I forgot. For us, Skyphos held up really well in the cold. I also had Nancy and Adriana, but they didn't hold up well as Skyphos. So I was surprised.
Yeah, I did. I noticed that too. We had double row cover for a while and then switched to a single row cover. And then eventually we took everything off. And I think it was Skyphos that lasted a bit longer than the rest of them.
I've noticed too that it depends on the size of the head lettuce when it gets into the cold weather, you know, how they tolerate the cold. So when they're smaller, they seem to be more prone to damage. So you can see the same variety do better or worse, sort of depending on what size they are as they enter that much colder weather. And it's great to hear the feedback from you guys, because I actually did a trial with a grower in Amherst this fall looking at different head lettuce varieties, and Rui, which I think Elliot mentioned, was one of the ones that did really well. It's the dark red color gets really pretty once it gets cold. And then Muir also has done really well. The interesting thing is that a lot of the cold tolerant varieties are also the heat tolerant varieties. I think there's just like a physiological thing. So Muir is one of our most heat tolerant head lettuces, and I think it also does well in the cold. And then the other thing I've just wanted to share from growers that I work with is that a ton of people are just using Salanova or other one-cut varieties in their winter tunnels for lettuce, because those seem to, especially the incised and sweet crisp types, seem to do really well.
Great. So since you mentioned salad mixes, does anyone have any stories to share from this season? What varieties that worked, that didn't work?
I have a question. So I would love to grow Salanova, but I am challenged with dates. That's why I was looking up from when I planted that Muir. I usually have really good notes, but they fall off in August. Haha. And I have pictures somewhere here. So anyways, if anybody has like, oh, you know, I grew Salanova and it's headed up like this time, meaning like, you know, whatever this is, December 7th or something, and that's perfect to sell. If they have a start date when they started it, you know, seeded it, that would be helpful for me in southeastern Connecticut.
I'll just speak up really quickly. I grow Salanova just for the first maybe 2 plantings, and then the very last planting to be harvested in November. And I just find that Salanova doesn't hold up very well in the heat. That's just been my experience. So I've moved away from Salanova, and now I do sort of really tight spacings of lettuces that I want to include in the mix. So that's like Muir and Cherokee, the Ruhai and the Mini Romaine, Dragoon. And so that's been my experience with Salanova. So that's, you know, first planting, meaning I would sow it in first week of March, and just those first 2 plantings. And then the last planting would be somewhere in late mid-August, I guess. Anyone else grow Salanovas, or has anyone grown the equivalent, I don't know what they're called, but for high mowing? I've heard those are good as well.
I've grown.
We've
this is
grown.
Robert.
Go ahead, Robert.
This is Robert from Echo Farm. I've grown the Easy Cut or Easy Leaf lettuce series from High Mowing. I've not actually tried it in the summer because I feel like all of my lettuce turns out really bitter in the summer. I need to do more rigorous trials with that, but I found that the Easy Leaf varieties from High Mowing have done well for me in the fall. But I've not tried Salanova, so I'd be interested to hear if anybody has done a side-by-side comparison of Salanova versus the one-cut lettuces from High Mowing.
Steve, do you want to go? I want to jump in ahead of you.
Yeah, well, and I can address that from Robert directly, since we've grown some of those Easy Cuts right next to the Salanova in the tunnels in the winter the last few years. And Buckley was the red sort of incised type from High Mowing that was recommended in a similar discussion to this a few years ago, but I have not had as great luck with it. It looks lovely and tastes lovely, but it's been prone. It's the only lettuce we've grown in the tunnels that's been prone to white flies and to early bolting. In fact, last week we cleared out a section that had bolted already for some reason, whereas the Salanova, the incised and Sweet Crisp next to it are in perfect condition. So I'm not sure why that is, but it's happened a couple of years in a row now, and I don't plan to grow it anymore. That said, the Buckley and Esbrook and Ezria, they all look really nice. And while they've got a better price point than the Salanova, I think the Salanova has been consistently excellent, particularly in late fall and early spring to early summer. But I've also moved the Salanovas out of my summer growing. So it's really just some of the first and last plantings of the season for us.
Yeah, I agree. We've also been growing, or this year we grew the High Mowing varieties next to the Salanova, and some of the High Mowing varieties were fine, especially, so we find that our Salanova and both that and the High Mowing grows really well in the early spring. And so you basically couldn't really tell the difference then, but then sort of like as the season got on, it was clear that the Salanova was growing better. So yeah, I would agree with what you're saying, Steve. We really wanted it to be great because yeah, it's like a lot cheaper, and also it's a big non-organic seed expense that we're doing. But I will say also that the High Mowing varieties tend to have like bigger leaves, and so when you're doing the one cut, it's like you tend to have larger leaves in the mix, which is sometimes not great as well. The last thing I want to say is that we've been experimenting with putting shade cloth over our Salanova beds in the summertime, and it seems to help with the sort of summer problems.
I would just add that we actually trial all the High Mowing varieties next to the Salanova in pretty much every season, most year at the Johnny's Trial Farm, and it's been educational. But as a result, one of the things that we did is this year we added 2 of those varieties, Brentwood and Hampton, which are the oak leaves, because we think that those actually do a little better in certain slots than the Salanova oak leaves. So you can find those in the catalog and on the web this year. And those are kind of, they bulk up better than the Salanova oak leaves, especially in summer, but also I think they do a little better in fall too, compared to the Salanova green and red oak leaf.
Okay, so we only have a few more minutes left for lettuce. So let's talk about lettuce heads and maybe heat drought tolerant varieties.
I would say that I was blown away by how good Panisse was in this hot, dry summer. And we actually ran our irrigation well dry. And so they received almost no supplemental irrigation, and just they held in the field for weeks and looked gorgeous. I love that variety.
Awesome. Any other favorite head varieties or varieties that do well in heat drought conditions?
I like Grazion, which is one of our newer summer crisp varieties, but it's like slow to bolt and pretty heavy even under some stressful conditions.
And I know
I
Julie.
just threw it in the chat, but the Cherokee and New Red Fire, I think, are my sort of go-to summer into fall. Have been excellent, and to some degree Magenta, but it struggled a little bit in the hot of this summer. It just gets a little warped and swirly.
Yeah, I love New Red Fire. That's one of my big lettuce heads. Did you say Cherokee?
Yeah, Cherokee has been kind of our go-to red, and it's doing wonderfully now in the tunnel as well.
I just have an issue with Cherokee that it goes bitter really quickly. So that's been my experience. And then Julie, I know you wanted to hear about lettuce varieties that people like for winter tunnels. Does anybody have any?
We definitely use that Hungarian winter pink from Adaptive in our winter tunnels, and it does really well. We haven't quite dialed in the timing yet. It's always ready a little faster than we want it to be, but it's really nice.
All right, we're gonna move on to the next topic unless someone else has any comments related to lettuce production.
I have one last comment. I really love the wild garden seed lettuce head, some of the heirloom varieties in the spring and fall, particularly Rain to Glass and Blush Butter Oak. I think they're fantastic, but I can't really get them to head up in the summer. But I'd love if anyone has summer heads that are, I don't know, I just think they're really special and tasty. But if anyone has comments on summer lettuce in those categories, I'd love to hear.
Would you say summer lettuce, what varieties again? Because we do Muir, Cherokee, and Romaine during the summer and have great success. So let me know what you're looking for.
I guess any of them that you're really excited about being like really delicious or particularly beautiful.
We sow Muir during the summer. We changed to a new Romaine, and I'll look that up in a moment for you. And Cherokee and Ruxai, and all of them do awesome. We do those on fabric, and we start them off. We have shade cloth. Do you do shade cloth?
I haven't tried with shade cloth yet, but I may.
That's the key to our heat during the summer. Yeah. So I will look up. So it's Cherokee, Ruxai. We also do iceberg. Yeah, I know it's not nutritionally great, but it's delicious with a BLT. All right, and I will look up the Romaine variety for you. All right, one moment. Our seed catalog. Go ahead.
Enya, what varieties from Wild Garden Seed did you mention?
Blush Butter Oak and Rain de Glace. That one's like an heirloom iceberg. It gets really crunchy in the middle.
Yeah, my experience with heirloom lettuces is that you can only plant it for the first planting because they always bolt. I don't know what you can do with the heirloom varieties.
Mm-hmm. But if you're looking for flavor, there are a lot of the sort of like mini heads that are really good and flavorful. Like someone mentioned Thurinus, and other sort of like mini romaine heads are really great tastings in the early spring and into the summer. So those are like, of course, I'm forgetting the name of the
Newham is one
trio.
of them.
Yes, Newham is one of them. And Rosaine is another really delicious one that's sort of bronzy red, mini little gem.
And there's one that starts with a B that we really liked.
Yeah.
All right, back to Teresa. I will say that in the middle of the summer, we changed it from Coastal Star Romaine to Sparks, Sparx, and that was from Johnny's. That did really, really well for us. Then we changed back to Coastal Star at some point. We do Crispino iceberg lettuce, which is great. That does not want so much shade cloth, just so you know, to make a nice, incredible head. And we do Ruxai, great, went all summer long, incredibly great. Cherokee did great this year. We stopped Skyphos during the heat of the summer, and pretty much now we're just doing Muir instead of 2-star. We're just doing Muir all straight through. And my other farmer just told me that she believes the last planting of Muir was either 9/4 or 9/10, which would be August 4th. We seeded it. That's September? No, that's when she planted it. Oh, never mind, because I bet you that's when we planted it. planting of mûre. So it would have to have been 4 weeks before in August. So I would have done that last mûre in our high tunnels a little bit later because we have a really warm, we found a consistently warm season here. So in high tunnels, even with Remay, that held up incredibly well and it was very flavorful. Last thing I'll say, and I'll mute myself, is if you find that your lettuce is being bitter, I read that if you soak it for like an hour in cold water, so like Cherokee, if you're finding it's too bitter, which I have not, but it's okay that believe people, just leave it in cold water a little bit longer, I believe. And I'm gonna mute myself.
Thanks for that, Teresa. All right, let's move on to the next topic. We spent a little bit more time than should have for that one. All right, so brassicas next. Bunching broccoli, there were a few entries for this one, so should we start there? So I think everyone knows that Happy Rich was not an option this year, and we were probably all scrambling to find replacements. So I tried BC 1611. Am I saying that right? I tried a whole slew of things, but that one definitely did the best. I was trying to do an open pollinated variety, so I did the one from Fedco. So what's the name of it? I can't remember. Oh, Piracicaba. And
Okay.
it had a really long, you know, all these varieties, a lot of them have a really long harvest window. But this one, because it's a open pollinated, just it just makes harvest really challenging because every plant just grows differently and has different shapes. And but other than that, the flavor was great. It wasn't as sweet as, you know, Happy Rich or the BC 1611. Some of the other varieties didn't work that well for us. We did try Atlantis. It was productive, but not nearly as productive as BC, and there's a few others. But let me stop talking. So everyone.
Yeah, I would agree.
Sorry,
Oh,
go ahead, Robert.
Elliot, did you want to chime in as well?
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say, I never grown it before, but I had there was some seed lying around for the Burgundy, so I planted a couple 100 feet of it. I'm biased against, I think, sprouting broccoli stupid for no reason, but there was just like so much broccoli, and it was just like, I couldn't believe like this Burgundy. It was just like 40, 50 bunches a week, and so like and it was like beautiful purple size, and he started with like nice big ones that you could bunch, and then it kind of got like, or you could wait a little longer and they get a little more spread out. So I was very pleasantly surprised with Burgundy.
It's beautiful in the fall. It's not great to try in like early summer. So save that one for fall production. And if any of you are like sort of curious to compare these varieties on the Johnny's website, I don't know if I can, I don't think it's worth sharing my screen, but like if you go to the Johnny's website and you go to BC 1611, you go down to the bottom, there's a little link that says mini broccoli varieties planting program. And it's nice because it actually sort of lays out all the different options. Do they have a short harvest window or a long harvest window? What's the spacing for them? Because they actually all kind of work a little differently. Like some of them are real broccoli hybrids, others are crosses with Gailon. So they like different spacing and different timing. Some have a shorter harvest window and a longer harvest window. And so that planting program chart is really helpful if you're sort of trying to figure out like exactly how each one is supposed to work. But because Happy Rich is like kind of a big deal in the Northeast, I talked to a lot of people who tried a bunch of these, and BC 1611 was definitely the winner, although it doesn't taste as good as Happy Rich, but nothing does. I think the closest for flavor is a new one that we have this year called Noble Jade, which is kind of a different animal because you plant it like 4 to 6 inches apart, and it has a much shorter harvest window, so you'd have to do like many more successions, but it has more of a flavor and texture like Happy Rich because it has more of that Gailon genetics in it.
Who else was it? Was it Will? Were you going to say something?
Yeah, I shared Elliot's experience with the Burgundy and had a lot of fun at market trying to explain the difference in flavor between the Burgundy and the BC 1611, which in my opinion, there really wasn't any. But yeah, they were both extremely productive, and we actually kind of neglected we never ended up mowing our spring planting, like early summer harvest, and it came back and produced a ridiculous amount of broccoli in the fall. So yeah, I couldn't necessarily recommend that, but the pollinators loved it too.
All right, should we move on to
I just want to add on this on the sprouting. I've been growing the Pierre Chicaba and Happy Rich, and I grew them next to each other in the tunnels in the winter, and they were incredibly productive. We had sprouting broccoli all winter long last year from a late summer planting, and we've got it. We're harvesting off it now again, and the Happy Rich and Pierre Chicaba don't look too different from each other in our experience here, and likewise now with the BC 1611. I think they're from our experience, they've been pretty comparable.
Great. All right, I think Steve, this was yours, cabbage, Napa, and European types. Is that yours? Yeah, anyone have any favorites? Napa, European types?
This is Ian from Wellstone.
Hey, Ian.
How you doing? Wakamine from Kinsawa seed is the best cabbage I've grown. And I go for very quick cabbages. I don't do any long grinders, but it heads up pretty quickly. It's more of a flattened head, but it's consistently right at, 2.5, 3 pounds. It's a beautiful cabbage.
Awesome.
Can you say that variety again?
I'll put it in chat for you. And the other thing, the pointed red cabbage, I've grown Tinty from one of the West Coast seed companies, TINTY. It's okay. If you're looking for a red cabbage that has the consistency of Caraflex, I haven't found one yet. And they all tend to run a little larger from what I've seen. But that's really all I got on that. I'll go put that name into the chat for you.
For Napa, I've always grown Minuet as like my only Napa cabbage. And it's always worked pretty well. In regards to red cabbage in general, I have never had as good of a luck with red cabbage compared to green cabbages or Chinese cabbages. I even stopped growing them entirely in the earlier part of the season and just do some in the fall, and they still always end up smaller in size than the green. And I don't know what my problem is and why that always happens to me, but it is consistent, and they all kind of get the same fertility and treatment. So any thoughts on that are welcome. And my red cabbage I grow is Omero. I do a lot of the Johnny's cabbages, Famosa Omero Foreo, storage number 4.
Yeah, I like to grow, smaller size cabbages too. So love the Minuet. So also with the green cabbages, I like to grow small ones. And I wonder, Julie, if there's any intention for Johnny's to find a purple variety that's like just as like a fresh market, quick, short days to maturity type of red cabbage that might be on the pipeline. Or
we've been talking about it a lot. We're trialing a ton of varieties, but there are certain traits that are just really hard to breed because of how DNA is structured. Like there's something about red cabbages where it's really hard to breed a nice early one. And there are a few out there, but we haven't found any that we feel like confident enough to put in the catalog. And so we're still working on it. You know, every year we're trialing new stuff, but there's like a reason that you're missing that, you know. It's not like we haven't found one that we feel really good about. And in general, red cabbages, like, I think that, you know, I'm sure you've all noticed that, like, in general, red vegetables tend to grow slower than green ones, right? There's like a physiological effect there where all of the, you know, the pigment in the leaves is actually slowing down photosynthesis a little bit. So that's part of why it's harder to breed an early red cabbage. And I think, I don't know much more of the science of it, but I think that's part of why red cabbages end up a little smaller also.
It's really interesting. All right, since the brassica time is finishing pretty soon, let's talk about Asian greens and maybe arugula, if anyone has anything to say about those.
Yeah, so this is kind of a good segue from Napa to Asian greens, but we did the Tokyo Bacana for the first time this year and absolutely loved it. We direct seeded it, which I loved. It was just like one less thing to worry about in the propagation house. And we cut it as baby leaves to put into like a kind of spicy salad mix as like a mellowing out flavor. So like with some mustards and things like that, which people really liked. And then we also cut it as like 10-ish inch heads and marketed it either bunched together or if they're really large, sold them as individual heads. We need to work on our chefs and wholesale accounts a little bit more on it, but I think it tastes delicious and it was really easy to grow.
Yeah, well, I agree with you on the Tokyo Bacana. It's awesome, right? It's beautiful. I only do it for like full size. I don't do any leafy greens, and it's gorgeous. I think it is a harder sell. CSA members are like, what is that? Is it a romaine lettuce? Is it a cabbage? You know, so there's that kind of part to it. You know, to fill in some of those slots early and later in the season, you know, a lot of us probably do a variety of Asian greens, and I've grown a lot of different ones over time, and I feel like I trial something new every year, and this year I tried, I have a couple bok choys that I really like. Oh, I tried Li Ren choy, which is a little one. That for me sucked. Could not handle any kind of heat whatsoever, like bolted under Rime in the spring, even bolted in the fall. Because I don't know, and I'm whatever. It's just not for me. I realized that pretty quickly. I also tried choy sum, because I've done komatsuna, I've done some other stuff from Johnny's. I tried choy sum this year for something else. That bolted like lightning fast, and I left it because the pollinators loved it. But that was like a quick experiment in both the earlier summer and the fall, and realized that's just not going to work.
Speaking of bolting bok choy, then I know there's Black Summer.
I love Black Summer. Yeah,
Black Summer's great.
Yeah.
One of my favorites. Black Summer and Joy Choy is my other favorite.
Susan, have you tried Asian Delight?
No.
It's a small teacup bok choy, but I've never had it bolt on me. It's a white stem, not a green stem. Doesn't get very big.
It's very slow bolting, and it's beautiful with the white stem and really dark leaves, and it's so cute, like Li Ren choy should be.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Li Ren choy I have not had good experiences with, but Black Summer is great in the heat.
Yeah.
You know where I see Li Ren choy look really beautiful is in winter tunnels. That's where I've seen it like really shine.
That's the only place mine didn't bolt, to be honest with you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love those couple of varieties of choy that y'all mentioned, and I was looking up just for like some other structure, leaf shape, which is why I tried the choice sum, but that did not work at all.
All right, let's quickly talk about arugula and move on to the next topic.
Cool. Can I jump in?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so I was curious about arugula. So we just grow Johnny's standard arugula variety, and sometimes it goes great, and sometimes it goes terrible, and I can't seem to figure out what is making it do great or terrible at any given time. And it feels like it's only worth it if we can get 2 cuts off of it, and I just can't figure out how to make that happen. Like I thought it was a seasonal thing, but like this year, it didn't really go according to what I thought it was doing in the season. So I was just wondering if anyone had any like alternative varieties or ways to keep arugula from bolting.
Rachel, try Esme, especially in the fall. I don't know who carries it, maybe High Mowing.
Johnny's has.
Johnny's does too.
Okay. It was harvestable the 18th of October for us.
Cool.
It's still in my tunnel. It's a foot tall. It hasn't bolted. It hasn't turned yellow.
Wow.
It's huge. I don't even know what to do with it. I just
What I like about it too is that it holds up in the in washing better. Like it's not as thin and tissue papery as some of the standard arugulas. So I feel like it's just easier to manage post harvest too.
It doesn't bruise. Like arugula tends to bruise very quickly. Esme's sturdier.
I just wanted to share my experience with arugula too, Rachel, because I didn't think I would have problems growing arugula, but this fall I had quite a bit of problems. I had these black specks on the leaves, and it kind of just spread. And I don't know if it was from the seed, or there was one planting that I did in another field that didn't get it. So I think it did help, like it did spread because it was so close to each other, the other plantings. I don't know if anyone else had that issue.
Downy mildew.
Is it downy mildew?
Yeah, arugula gets it, and especially in the late summer and fall. And the only resistant varieties are the Diplotaxis wild type ones, which take forever to size up so it's like once you start getting it regularly in the fall, it's just really hard to grow arugula unless you can find a different site that's more protected.
Right. All right. Any last thoughts or comments? Okay. All right, Solanaceae. Where do we want to start? Let's start with eggplants and peppers, I guess. Any favorites?
That Anina that just came out is the best striped I've ever grown.
What is it called?
Anina, Annina. It's easily the best striped. It's way more productive. It's spineless, which, you know, at first doesn't seem like a big thing, but when you're harvesting bushel after bushel of these things and you're like a pin cushion, it's nice to have a break.
Second Anina, that was great.
And that's organic seed, which is nice.
This was my second or third season growing Aretusa, the white variety, which in the past I really didn't care for, but we had a just prolific production in the high tunnel. You know, I don't know, people are a little bit wishy-washy on white eggplant. I don't know if it's worth it from a marketing standpoint, but it produced a ton.
I think they just mar so quickly that your success was probably the best way to do it, is to grow it in more of a protected culture. Because in the field, I mean, any nick on a white eggplant shows up really, really well. And I mean well in a bad way. Dancer has always been good for us. I've grown Dancer. I think we've grown Dancer the entire time we've been farming for, I think, 10 years now. And it flags at the end a little bit, but all eggplant kind of flags. But it's the color people usually rave about. And it's a real sturdy plant. And It doesn't have any special, it's not really any more or less resistant to verticillium, and I've really never found an eggplant that's resistant to verticillium. I don't think there is one. Irene has been touted as having that, but I didn't find that to be true. But it's sturdy enough that I can fight through it pretty well. The dancer.
Any sweet pepper or hot pepper varieties? I've talked to Rachel and others about this, but I kind of have my go-to, which is Carmen and Escamillo, and I probably should try more varieties, but I'm kind of like stuck with those. So
The like I tried to grow the those lunchbox peppers this year. So no offense to anyone, but like involved with lunchbox peppers, but they're like, I hated them. They're like tiny and awful, especially the red ones. And so like I just wish I had Carmen, like Yoko said, and Aranos is just like superior to the lunchbox in every way. It's just like a million perfectly sweet, giant, not giant, like small to medium sized orange peppers that taste like orange Tic Tacs. And so
yeah, I do Aranos too. I love Aranos.
Those lunchbox peppers are like tissue paper to BLS too. If they just fold up shop, at least the ones I've tried to grow.
So question, am I unmuted? Yeah. Could someone, whoever said the last pepper, Aranos, if you could just type that in a chat so we have that. And are people having success with Carmen's? And we love them. We're gonna actually try to get away from Bells. It's just educating the public, and we feel like we're doing a good job because they're much sweeter than Bells. But we want to move them to our high tunnels, our movable high tunnels. What's everybody's experience with pollination? Because we do put insect netting down.
I think peppers, don't they self-pollinate? I only say this because I'm going to be growing shishitos and jimmies in the tunnel, and I'm pretty sure they self-pollinate.
We do hot peppers in the tunnel, and we've never had a problem with pollinating, and we have insect netting on the sides.
Yeah, and in my experience, they're self-pollinating.
Right, and Teresa, you reminded me, I did want to talk about bell peppers because I know bell peppers are hard to grow, and I actually had pretty good experience growing Ace this year. That I don't know if it was like a just this year kind of thing, but that worked out really well for me. And I normally don't ever get good bell peppers, so.
For years and years, I grew Ace, was the North, King of the North, a whole slew, every single colored pepper out there. It was like religion, like we grew them all. And then last year, I think maybe Rachel, after talking to you, always Carmen also in that mix too. And then I had just had a horrible year, tons and tons of pepper maggot a couple of years ago. And so I've been struggling with that at my farm. And I was like, screw the bell peppers, I'm done with them. And I just grew Carmen and Escamillo this year. And yeah, the flavor profile is so much better. And I'm never going back to bell peppers again, as far as I'm concerned.
The only bells people seem to want are the purple ones because people are addicted to purple things. I don't know really why, but they gobble up the purple ones and they really don't care about the other ones.
Yeah, I was gonna say the only bells we still grow are the Islanders, and we pick them purple, and people love them. I try to tell them they don't taste very good, but they don't care. Also, we've been growing the Carmen Escamillos for like, I don't know, probably 5 or 6 years, but there definitely was it took a little while to teach our customers, but now they're like 100% on board. So if you give it a couple years, I think they'll come around.
I'm totally trying not at all to do sales pitches here, but I'm going to pitch you one pepper because I love it, because I would grow it if I were still growing, which is called Lilo. It's a purple bell, and it's like, you know how like you want Islander to be like gorgeous and heavy and like a real bell, but it's like sort of lighter purple and thin walled, and it's like not quite where you want it to be. So Lilo is you can grow it in either the greenhouse or the field, and it's purple at immaturity. So it's like picking a green pepper. So it tastes like a green pepper, but it is like thick walled and heavy and dark purple and super productive because you're harvesting it at immaturity. And so if you let it go red, it's like a kind of crazy garnet red purple color, which is really interesting. But you can start harvesting it, a month before other things, because it's dark purple at immaturity. So that's my one product
That's
pitch.
cool. I tried to buy those last year. I don't remember who I was buying them from, but then they were like, oh yeah, we'll get them to you like late. And I was like, okay, I'll still put them in. And then they were like, no, they're not going to be here ever. So, but yeah, they looked very cool in the catalog. So you succeeded at least in that.
Yeah, I believe that Johnny's offered them, but said you couldn't get the seed till blah, blah, blah. And then they were just never available.
It's always very annoying with a new product.
All right, let's talk about tomatoes. Yeah, okay, that's probably going to take some time. So, any favorite tomatoes you like to grow in caterpillar tunnels or greenhouses?
BHN 589.
Yep.
It's a beast. And it's definitely not a determinant. It's not indeterminate, but it's definitely not a determinant, especially undercover,
Semi-determinate.
in the truest sense of the word.
All right, what about heirloom slicers?
Really? Nobody?
All right, I'll talk.
I did not split, produce well, and is super, super flavorful.
I
Tie-dye.
missed the first part. What was that, Teresa? What variety?
Berkeley tie-dye. Produces well, doesn't split, and is super, super flavorful.
Yeah, I've had good luck with Berkeley tie-dye as well.
I know two that do really well for me are Cherokee Purples. It's a perfect size for the market. People want to try an heirloom, but they don't want these, the big, giant, really ugly ones. And then when they do want those big, giant, ugly ones, German stripes they're just so heavy. The value is really there in the individual tomatoes.
Hey, Julie, talk to us about Gin Fizz.
So Gin Fizz is bred for organic systems. It's trying to be as appealing as striped German is in terms of color and, having a beautiful golden color and internal, what do you call that? Red.
Zoning.
It has really good disease resistance for the tunnel though, so you can grow it undercover. It's not going to get leaf mold, and it's productive early, so it sets heavier on like compared to Margold and definitely compared to striped German. It's going to set heavier early on in the summer. And it tastes good. It's, it's in that class of heirlooms, the like hybrid heirloom types. And I think it tastes, personally, I think it tastes better than Margold, but none of them have as good flavor as the heirlooms because they're hybrids. So they have all these other traits bred into them, and therefore they're like, the flavor isn't quite up there. But I think that Gin Fizz is something really exciting. It's
Okay.
really nice big size.
Because of benefit cost analysis, I mean, I'm sure the heirlooms do taste better, but the loss is so much higher. So you're saying it's akin to Margold, but earlier, potentially better flavor, same
and prettier. I mean, it looks more like an heirloom in terms of having that rose-colored striping. But you know, if disease is a problem in a tunnel, then that seed is worth it. If you're able to manage disease without the resistance, then it's clearly not worth it. But I think that's why you invest in those varieties.
And then that's why I do. I found that of all the French heritage, the only one that really has any disease armor is Margold, especially powdery and leaf mold.
Yeah, and the new one, Mar Noir, is trying to improve on Mar Narrow. So Mar Narrow doesn't have the leaf mold at all, and I've seen that melt down in a lot of tunnels, but Mar Noir has that same really nice dark color with actual leaf mold resistance. And that's a new one this year too.
Julie, are you seeing those melt and decay on when they're grown from seed as opposed to grafted? Because my experience with the Marnero and Margold, they've been excellent, but I've grown them all as grafted.
Those varieties are bred to be grafted, so they definitely respond well when they're grafted. They produce a lot more when they're grafted, and that's kind of like what makes worth it paying for them. But I've seen them, like the leaf mold is an issue that's scion related. You know, you're going to see that whether or not it's been grafted. And leaf mold resistance is just a little harder to breed into a variety.
We got destroyed by leaf mold this year, so I'm pretty well versed into what survives and what doesn't. And Margold, along with Sakura and Apero, really kept it together. Unfortunately, everyone loves the golden ones, and the golden ones they can't handle leaf mold in the least. Even with heavy pruning and lots of, purpose sprayed on them and all that stuff. So that's what I've been looking for. And there's actually, this year I found there's a lot of them on the market right now. There's a lot of leaf mold resistant stuff. So hopefully some will sort out.
For the reds, watching the Caymans and the Geronimos, it was incredible. Like I had planted, I think, Big Beef next to Caymans, and like halfway through the season, the way I could tell when I was changing varieties was just like what the leaves looked like. It was really dramatic. So,
Rachel, what's the difference between Cayman and Geronimo in terms of flavor? Because I can't stand Geronimo or Rebelsky. I can't eat them.
I mean, they're not great. We did a taste test. I wouldn't say anyone like super agreed, but neither, like Cayman wasn't at the bottom. It was sort of like in the middle. It also started doing this weird thing at the end of the season where it would get like the circle around the top, like a circle crack.
I got that on everything this year for some reason.
Yeah, it was super weird. It was worse on the
radio
Cayman
cracking.
side. Yeah. I don't know.
Oh, great. I was going to grow Cayman. Oh, well.
I mean, you still should try a little. It was really good up until that moment.
It's that or Big Dina.
We started doing Cayman this year in place of the Marbonne. And I thought it was an improvement, but I didn't have a side-by-side comparison. So I thought it was an upgrade this year.
Has anyone grown Big Dina, which is in that same kind of gang of red to greenhouse slicers?
We grew it like a bunch of years ago, but we didn't do a very good job growing tomatoes in general, so I wouldn't take anything from that experience.
There was a specific question about Wisconsin 55. How good of a producer is it? Timing of the fruit. Can anyone answer that? Julie, are you thinking about this?
Yeah, I mean, it's like, how do you quantify? It's a good producer. I mean, it's like, and like everything, it completely depends on how you treat it. But like, I would say it's, maybe a 7 out of 10 in terms of yield.
Right, we just have a few minutes left on tomatoes. We haven't talked about hybrid paste tomatoes, and if there's any specific varieties that are disease resistant for Verticillium or Fusarium.
So for paste tomatoes, we did speckled Roman, which are just insane, and I think they're gorgeous and taste delicious. and we tried San Marzano too, which we didn't so much like, primarily because of the size. So if anybody has a recommendation for a larger paste tomato, that's a hybrid, I'd be curious.
Determinate or indeterminate?
Either way, we primarily grow indeterminates, but whatever feedback you have.
Plum Regal does make a nice, pretty good sized fruit flavor, because it's a lot of those late blight resistant tomatoes, the flavor can be a little wonky. It was hit or miss. That might have been user error though.
I'd say Plum Regal is a favorite among my customers. There's also, we have a new one this year that's a customer submission, which I think is always pretty cool. That's large also, which is called Chipola's Pride. I actually haven't tasted it, so I can't tell you for sure, but that's my number 2 recommendation.
Juliet's always our favorite here. I think it's just, they're small, but they're incredibly productive and make great sauces, and also can go into pints and quarts pretty easily too if you're marketing them that way.
All right, I think we can move on to the next topic unless someone has something to say.
Well, I just have a really quick thing about this alternative heirlooms question. Johnny's bred this new tomato called Abigail that's trying to be like more towards the heirloom flavor for field production. So it's a pink Brandywine sized tomato, and we're excited for people to try it. The seed is actually still being cleaned and whatnot, so it's going to be available kind of on the later side of things this year. But I'd love to know what you guys think about it. It's like way more crack resistant, and more disease resistant. So it has real potential in the field as an alternative to Brandywine.
What's the process for customer submission of a tomato variety?
So if you have seed that you've been bred or a seed that you've been keeping for years, you can send it to Johnny's and see, have people have the research team trial it. And there's a little thing on the website, I could send you the link, but for customer submissions. And every year we grow out a bunch of different things. It's usually tomatoes. It's every once in a while we get peppers, sometimes some flowers, but I think it's such a cool thing that people are willing to share.
Great, let's move on to the next topic. Rabbits. Should we start with cucumbers? Are there any varieties that you found that are resistant to cucumber beetles or other pests?
I grew mostly Bristol this year. It's just a ridiculous amount of cucumbers. With the cucumber beetles specifically, I don't know if they're particularly resistant, but I kind of just would cover them I just hoop them and cover them until they ran into until they were going to hit the row cover, and then I just pull everything and trellis them. But they also they were fine on the trellises, but they didn't particularly want to climb, so they also were fine just on the ground. But I had a lot of luck with those.
I love Bristol. And I agree, it's more of a ground plant, but it's sturdy as hell, and it doesn't mark up it doesn't mark up very easily. And it definitely pushed deeper into Downey's season than some of the other ones.
So Teresa and Rob over here at Huntsbrook, I know people need to do field cucumber still, but I'm just gonna say we switched to only high tunnel production with insect netting, and you can get extremely long season out of your cucumbers right into November. We predominantly were growing Corinto, is that the name? Kind of sad, I believe that maybe there was a disease that came in on the seed because we didn't have it last year, but we had disease throughout every house that we had with Corinto. So we're going to heat treat them this year. And we are doing a 7, what's it called, honey? 7-row seed.
Yeah.
We're gonna try that for our pickler this year. And we also did an English cucumber, but oh, you didn't like that? We're gonna try a new variety probably, but high tunnel production trellised with insect netting is the way to go with cucumbers. We'll never go back to field.
Teresa, who's Rob?
I love you.
Any favorite cucumbers in general?
I like Nokia a lot.
Which one?
Nokia.
Noikia. Dega likes Noikia. That's an English cucumber, right?
No, it's a Japanese cucumber.
A Japanese cucumber. Holly.
Teresa, Teresa, did you say you were doing the row 7 cucumber?
The pickler. We're gonna try that this year.
Which one? That's not the 7082, is it?
It's the only one that they have.
Yeah, we've been doing that for the last 2 years and we're dropping it this year.
Oh, why?
It just didn't fit the model in the high tunnel. It wasn't as productive as the rest of them. Different. The size, it was more of, I mean, if you're picking it for a pickler, I guess that wouldn't make a big deal because you're picking them so young. But we were trying to pickle them as a semi-slicer variety and they just never got, they're stubby. They're not very large.
We're growing them as a
Yeah, we would be growing those just as a pickler. Did you like the flavor or no?
It was okay. It was not bad. It produced pretty well for, I mean, it's not Corinto and it's not Bristol and it's not Katrina. So they're not like, it's not a huge producer in a high tunnel because, we grow all of ours in the high tunnel too. And it didn't succumb to the cucumber beetle pressure as much as some of the other ones did though. So we don't have insect netting on our tunnels because we have tomatoes and peppers in there, so.
But you will.
I don't think so, yeah, if you want to come and put that up and pay for it, that'd be great.
One day you will. I said no to Digga for many, many years.
I know. Anyway, yeah, it's worth it for you to try, I think. We're just gonna drop it this year. It just doesn't fit our model.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I find Little Leaf doesn't get attacked. I'm sorry. I find Little Leaf isn't quite as attractive to cucumber beetles, but again, that's anecdotal. And I have a bias towards Little Leaf because I think it's the longest tenured variety of anything we've grown.
While we're on the topic, English style cucumbers that grow in shorter vines. Does anyone know any varieties?
Is that a thing?
I have no idea.
Never heard of it.
All right, then let's move on to zucchini, summer squash.
I see this as borer. I can talk about borer management since they're my mortal enemies. The only thing I found to keep them at bay outside of growing exclusively moschata as a winter squash is to collar them with entrust. So your zucchini and all your susceptible, Peppos and Maximas, is to collar them weekly with entrust for I think 4 weeks. It's just rated for that now. That's a Jude filled me in on that. I miss Jude. And when I'm slack on that, I get hit. When I'm diligent, I keep them at bay. You get some late arrivals, but that's extremely effective.
For summer squash, I just feel like you can't beat Zephyr. It's insane.
It's got that winter squash genetics in it. It's just an animal.
And that's the thing with like all the Johnny's bread varieties, you'll notice, like we have a new one, Goldfinch, this year. They all have some of that winter squash genetics in them to make them that with a higher dry matter concentration so that they taste better and they're just less watery.
Are those the yellow squash specifically?
Wait, are the yellow squash?
The ones that have the genetic spread into them, or is that across the line?
It's pretty much across the line for Johnny's summer squash. Because we think that a lot of summer squash doesn't taste that good. So trying to always breed stuff that tastes better. So goldfinch is in that category. It's like a, you know, yellow crookneck, sort of semi crookneck, and Zephyr's in that category too.
Zephyr's is going to be really hard to unseat. That's like a universal now, like hickory turnips.
And for flavor, we go with Magda. You can't beat the flavor for Magda. We do grow Noche, but we, you know, for just the mass production, but we do Noche for flavor.
I agree with you with Magda for flavor, but I find the skin so, you know, easy to
Nick,
tear. Yeah.
I agree.
We do Alexandria, which is also really similar to the Magda, but it does bruise really, really easily. We trialed the cue ball and one ball this past year, and they did really, really well. They withstood the powdery mildew that came through to a certain extent. They ended up pushing out a ton of fruit really, really late after everything died off, which I wasn't expecting. We just never got around to pulling the vines. And all of a sudden we went in there and it was like, oh, we have squash now and it's like October. So that was just something that I thought was pretty neat for those two anyway.
I also tried cue ball and 8-ball for the first time this year because I've always grown like a patty pan, and my customers are like, what do I do with this? What is it? You know, what is it, a squash or what? So I was like, well, let me go something round. I'll do something roundish, but something different. And the cue ball is the kind of the light green one. Am I remembering it correct?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. So that one also super prolific, but the skin, I feel like definitely nicks and it bruises a lot faster. The 8-ball is the dark green one, which was not as prolific in production, but doesn't nick or bruise easily. But what I found is that both of those varieties are really, really spiky, which made harvesting a pain in the ass. So they are off the team, not doing those again.
If anyone's looking for a striped zucchini and doesn't want to deal with the heirlooms that are real finicky, Dario, and it's not carried by Johnny's, but Dario I found is the earliest squash I pick, and it's pretty prolific. Only thing is that it doesn't sell really well. It's beautiful and get almost a foot long and stay real skinny.
Why doesn't it sell well?
Beautiful.
I don't know, and I've pitched it every which way. Zucchini is one of those funny things. Even golden zucchini, people want green zucchini.
Yeah.
You know, green. And they say that it all tastes different. I keep telling people, if I blind taste tested you, you would not tell the difference. But gold's gotten better, but striped, they just.
That's
yeah,
what Noche for farmers, for the farmers market. That you know you're too busy to talk to people about, but like here we have a farmers market at our stand, so we'll do the it doesn't matter that it has a little nicks in it, and same thing for our CSA. Once we educated them, like say with the Zephyr, like we've never gone back to yellow zucchini, never, because Zephyr hands down has more flavor, and so does Magda to us, and it's I think it's a good plant. It does nick, but it's just educating your people. And then if you have to, so wholesale, yeah, maybe that's, you know, your standard Noche, that's okay.
The golden zucchini, actually, it's a lot of sight shopping because it's got that real bright orange and that bright green stem. I agree with the flavor. It's mainly just there is eyeball shopping with it. Plus I have a wholesale kind of push on it, but
what's that phrase? We eat with our eyes.
Yeah, purple bell peppers, you know.
All right, we just have a few minutes left for Kerbit. So if anyone wants to talk about melons or winter squash.
For the winter squash, I grew a couple of the Rose 7 varieties this year. So it was the I got their Kogi nut, and which is just like really put out a lot of fruit. I think it was like, I want to say it was like, I got like 400 of them out of like 85 row feet. So it was just like bananas, and they were like delicious and all that. The 898s they're like a small, cute little butternut. So they were a little silly size. So unless you could like really get a good price on them, it's probably not worth it versus a big one. But I don't know about other, I think there's a lot of different, everybody makes a Koji nut, I think, but I've never grown other ones, but I like that one. I'd be interested in anyone.
It's the other way around. The Koji nut I've never found anywhere. The little butternut, here's a little insider tip. You can buy the same exact plant from High Mowing at a substantially lower rate under the name Brule. Same breeder, same thing. And they get about £1. So yeah, you really have to have a market for them, but.
Our customer base absolutely loved the small butternuts. I mean, they went for them over any other winter squash that we grew, because it's it's a single serving. So they didn't have to worry about, what do I do with all this leftover soup, or what do I do with all this leftover squash? They would buy like 2, because everyone at a market seems to only shop for whatever their recipe calls for that day. So they just buy 2 or 3 or 4 just to feed their family. And we sold out of that more times than I can count, which this year, I don't know if because of the pandemic was just a fluke year for that. But they just they flew. Once we put them out there in the fall, they just flew off the shelf.
I've also had really great success with Kogi nut. And this might be anecdotal, but the past 2 years I had really bad squash vine borers, and they were the only variety that was completely unaffected. And I was still eating them in May.
What species is Kogi nut?
We should find out.
Is it, if it's Peppo or Maxima, then that's something, because those usually, the Moschata is the butternut and its friends like Futsu and whatnot. There's another great one. And they're solid.
It's a Moschata.
Oh, okay, there you go. So it's a Moschata, so that's why you didn't get any vine borers. That species is very unattractive to them.
We've grown that as autumn frost this year from High Mowing, and it's fantastic.
I love that variety.
That
I'm
was
like, why can't we carry that one? That's like such a great variety.
It's so pretty.
Love it.
We threw in way too much Tetsukabuto, and I say that because each plant produced 10 to 12 fruit, and we're just swimming in it. And unfortunately, it's the one that our customers need the most education on too. So if anyone wants to try a sample, we have some if you want to come pick it up. But I really like cooking with them. I think they're delicious. I think we might half the number that we put in and then try and educate people a little bit more.
I grew them last year and they were almost flavorless. Again, use your air. Did they have massive, massive leaves on tall stalks for you guys?
Yep.
Yeah.
Huge. I thought they looked like elephant ears.
They're like waist high. The leaves.
So you can't really grow them next to a smaller one if you have 2 varieties, because they'll shade them out. But huge.
Tetsukabuto last year, and it was covered in this like sticky goo and then covered in bees. Did you see that, or was that just us?
Is that honeydew? Did you have aphids?
Yeah, we didn't experience that, but
It was the only squash that did it though.
Okay, unfortunately, we got to move on because we have several more topics to cover. Okay, quinopods. So chard, multiple people mentioned. I'm personally going to try out more single color varieties and mix them together to bunch. But yeah, if you have any experience growing.
Silverado does have Cercospora resistance. it is not as cold resistant as they make it out to be. I found that Bright Lights is actually better, shockingly, for cold resistance, but it definitely is resistant to Cercospora.
Yeah, and all the white stem chards are more resistant, so that's just a good general tip. But so I've seen Silverado look really nice under a lot of Cercospora pressure. And we have a new one this year for this exact reason called Charbel, which is actually even nicer looking than like Ruby Red that has Cercospora resistance, and it has stems that are sort of striped magenta with a little orange, and it's like a really beautiful.
How does that compare to Rhubarb Supreme?
I mean, it has better Cercospora resistance and it's more upright, but it's not organic.
Gotcha.
Sorry, this isn't exactly. Oh, sorry.
I was just say, we started growing Argentata for the fall into winter and tried that in the tunnels, and that's done really well. Planting it in early August. Argentata from Fedco. I'll type it in there, but it's we were able to have it throughout the winter and spring. So by getting it established really early, or early August to mid-August, it's been a nice fall crop that we didn't have to worry about the frost as much on, and then gave us a couple cuttings before flowering in the spring.
So this isn't about variety exactly, but I just wonder how people plant chard, like what the spacing you guys use. I just recently noticed on Johnny's that it says 4 to 6 inch spacing, and I've always gone with multiple plants per spot and wider spacing. So I'm just wondering.
For bunching or little?
For bunching.
I do 3 by 12 offset in plastic, or like in landscape fabric for weed control, and that gets pretty big. I'm sure I can go tighter than that though.
Yeah, we tried it at 6 inches, 3 rows 6, and it seemed too close together. So we're at 9, 3 rows 9, and that seems to work.
Is that what single plant per spot?
Well, yeah, single plant.
Yeah, I do a single plant, 3 rows, 12 inches. Give it a lot of space.
That helps with Cercospora too.
Yeah.
Also, Yoko, we tried some of the single variety colors. I think we did Oriole, and I'm blanking on the pink red one we did. But the red one, like there was just so much bolting. It was like, I don't know why, but it didn't work great for us. So we just went back to the Bright Lights. But I don't know why. Maybe that was just us.
Interesting.
I'll also say that, I don't know if this is related or not, but I had developed really, really bad leaf miner in my spinach and chard a number of years ago. And this was despite covering it. You just can't really control it organically. And so a couple years ago, I decided, well, I'm just going to skip this entire family, and I'm just not going to grow it. And so I went, not only did I have bad leaf miner, but I also had bad Cercospora in the chard. And I went a full 2 years, they say 3 years out of that family, but I went 2 years without either of those crops, and just only did some beets this year just to see what would happen, and really had like no Cercospora. No leaf miner either. So again, it's hard to say if that's like situational or what.
Did you play on the same schedule?
Yeah. And I have a small field, but it was, I think, giving it that really long break maybe helped, maybe not, I don't know, but I'll just mention it.
It wasn't a real, they can be really year to year boom and bust sometimes. I didn't have I had them, but not a bad year. But they're brutal when they're bad.
Do you have a lot of chenopod weeds? Like, do you have a lot of like any kind of amaranths or like the lamb's quarters. I'm worried that like things would still survive on those guys.
No, not really much lamb's quarters at all at this, not that much anymore at this point. Amaranth, yeah, but I really, once I went through a whole year of not having this family, I mean, I didn't see any evidence of leaf miner anywhere.
Okay, what about beet varieties?
For Cercospora, Avalanche, and any of the bird beets, Robin and Kestrel and Eagle, I've had great success. They're pretty sturdy against it. Chioggia can be a little resistant to, I found.
All right, any last comments? We still have a few topics to cover, so if there's nothing else, move on. All right, APACA. Start with parsnips. I don't grow them, so don't have much to say, but Julie, any any insights?
Yeah, I mean, I would recommend Warrior. It's like a slightly different shaped, like Albion parsnips are kind of the one of the older varieties in there. You know, they narrow really drastically towards the end of the root, which makes them weigh a lot less. So Warrior is bred to be like slightly more carrot shaped. So it actually fills out at the bottom more and you get a better weight on it. It also makes them a little bit easier to dig. And they're shorter days to maturity. I'm forgetting what Albion was. I think maybe it was 120 and Warrior's 105. So that's what I recommend for parsnips.
Can someone just tell me when the best time of year to plant them is? We took about 3 years off from planting parsnips, and we're just going to do them again this year. And I'm just struggling to find a really good time frame of seeding them.
Right. I mean, the seeds are so moisture sensitive that like it really matters. So in some ways, the question is like, when do you have moisture and warm enough soils? Like I work with a couple really big parsnip growers in Western Mass, and they are basically they're aiming to sow around the 7th of June. But it's also sort of about when they're going to get enough rain.
Right. Well, we would have drip on them. We're small. We're small enough to be able to do that. It was more just like, soil temperature, I know, makes a huge difference. The moisture we're going to give it plenty of moisture, so that's not the issue. For some reason, I don't have any notes from a few years back, and I just was not sure the right timing for it.
Do other people grow parsnips? Not so much. Well, in Western Mass, it's the end of the first week of June.
We've only grown them for a couple years, but they did okay this year. I'm trying to find our seeding date. I will let you know when I find it.
I've grown them in the past and I've kind of given up on them only because I've seeded at various weeks during the month of June, more towards even really the end of June. But because they're so long to germinate, and June everything's starting to take off, and it's so easy to have them succumb to weed pressure. It's so hard to stay on top of them during the summer because they're so slow growing. It hasn't really seemed worth it recently to me.
Yeah, we did them around then, like end of June last year, and this year I did them on May 12th, and I don't know, it went better.
All right.
You seeded them on May 12th?
Yep.
Oh, wow, that's early.
I know, it seems bizarre. I don't know. I don't remember making that decision, but
Can I just share something about the carrot seed production world?
Yeah.
So one thing that I learned in the last, well, since I took this job, which I found sort of interesting, is that in both conventional and organic seed production, growers are really struggling with lygus bugs, which is like a seed-eating is it a beetle or no, it's a true bug. Anyway, basically they're having a lot of trouble producing enough seed because of insect pressure. So you'll notice that there are a lot of carrots that are out of stock. You'll notice a fair number of crop failures this year. Mokum was a crop failure. And so I just would really recommend that you trial several different varieties, especially if there's like one slot that's really important to you. Just, know that for the next few years, until they figure out how to manage that bug in seed production, it's going to be sort of volatile. So you want to, have more than just one variety that you like for your early carrot, because things are going to come and go at a much faster rate than in other crop types.
Thanks for that info. Well, then, should we talk about carrots and get back to celery later? Anyone have a favorite?
I really like romance. I like at the market bunching it with the greens on top, and they hold on to the greens really, really well. But based off of what she just said, does anybody have any other recommendations for bunching carrots other than romance?
I second romance too. I love romance. Very sturdy tops. It's great flavor. Nobody?
We do a lot of Miami from High Mowing in for main season carrot. I bunch everything, so I'm a lot of carrots, so I don't really super pay attention to the quality of the greens because I feel like so many of them are okay with that. But Miami has been a favorite.
I just find that a lot of times, even just pulling them out of the ground, the tops will come off, or as you're bunching them, you're just breaking carrots off. All the just they're constantly falling out of the bunches.
We don't have a problem with that. Right? Go ahead, say something.
I've pretty consistently grown Napoli all season long. I like it because it's fast. They're fast to size. They do get a little bit funky sometimes in summer plantings with the tops, but they hold their tenderness and their sweetness right on through. And one question I wanted to ask everybody was, does anybody have any experience using pelleted carrot seed in a Yang seeder?
Yeah, Digga, I used to do pelleted in there, but now I found that I really don't need it. I just went from using only pelleted carrot to using only unpelleted because the Jang does such a good job of precisely doing it. So I feel like I'm saving quite a bit by not doing the pelleted anymore.
Well, good. I won't go that other way then.
Thank you. That's perfect information.
As a novice Jang user, I just started using it this year. I used the pelleted, and because I figured I would just screw up and have to thin millions of carrots. So from that perspective, I did 5 rows on a 30-inch bed, and it came up, and I was like, that looks like it's not thick enough. But I left it alone, and it was a really very nice stand. But I think if I knew what I was doing, I would probably try the unpelleted.
Yeah, I'll say my crew, I think, can testify we've never thinned a carrot here. We don't do that. Now, there are some smaller ones that we end up sorting out, but we don't spend any time thinning.
What about rainbow carrot varieties?
Yeah, I want to ask that question too, more specifically with purple carrot varieties, because I don't really bother with doing rainbow. But I have done a lot of purple varieties over the years, and to me, they just don't taste as good, but some people.
Purple Elite grew pretty well for me, but again, the taste just wasn't there.
Yeah.
Especially small, they're bitter unless they're full sized.
I think that's true, like fairly across the board with purple carrots. Like once you roast them, they're okay, but raw, they all tend towards the bitter. Yeah.
Once we got a frost, it turned quite a bit sweeter. So maybe you can reserve them for fall plantings.
They bolt pretty handily, so it's generally the only time I do them.
Yeah.
Purple haze did pretty well for us this year. We have trouble with the bolting on the purples too. It seems like the darker the purple, the more apt it is to bolt.
What about reds?
Any other carrot comment?
Can someone tell me what, for the Jang, for seeding unpelleted carrots, what is the disc size? Like what do you guys use? We tried it a couple years ago and we couldn't get rows to actually come out uniformly. Like we'd get a ton of carrots that dropped, and then, it just was not good at all.
Steve, did you have an idea what you use? Or you can.
Yeah, I'll look back in my notes since we're not doing the pelleted anymore. I don't remember, but what I will say is that Johnny's puts out a really good guide for the Jang tools and the seed rollers. And there's some variability, but the pellets, especially with the pellet, should be pretty consistent. So they've got a recommended roller size for nearly everything you might use the rollers for.
Yeah, if you just search for Jang trial, it'll come up with like a big Excel spreadsheet that has like different varieties and different spacings. It's a good resource.
And that's for non-pelleted seed, right?
They have both on there.
Okay, great. Awesome.
Yeah, so I printed that out and kept that with my roller pack. Basically, it's like a good reference, and then I just double check it before and see if I need to move a size one way or another.
I did with the pelleted. I did the F. It was the FJ24, and then I just did it. I set it to maximum dump, so the 1/2 inch. So the whatever you had to do with the wheels to make it go dump as much seed as possible. That worked pretty well.
All right, let's quickly talk about celery. I don't know who wrote cutting celery, but I planted celery this year and did a bunch them by breaking off, individual stems. And that was really awesome. We had a really long harvest season. But I realized that there's not a ton of demand for celery in the summer. And then obviously in the fall, everyone wants celery. So if anyone has a good time window for planting for like mainly fall harvest, let me know.
Yoko, I grew celery for the first time this year, which was super fun. And my CSA customers went ballistic. It was so good. And I did it, I only had space to do it for the fall. And I really had no idea what to expect from this. So I transplanted it the end of July, which actually sounds really pretty late. And I was not sure that it was going to size up in time, but it totally did. And we harvested it all at once. I want to say maybe the first week of November.
Awesome.
And we could have, just selected the biggest ones at that time and tried to let the smaller ones continue to grow. But they were all pretty decent in size. I don't know if maybe I would transplant a week earlier just to be on the safe side. I don't, there's some options there, but I was surprised at how well it did.
When did you see it?
When did I see it?
Susan, while you're looking, I transplanted July 3rd, and We harvested over probably 6 weeks between maybe the beginning of October and the second week of November, and that also seemed to work pretty well.
Okay. We seeded the week of 6/15, and again, because I didn't really know what I was doing because I hadn't grown celery before. We thought it would only be 4 weeks in the greenhouse, but it was actually longer. So we didn't, we transplanted it more like closer to 5 or 6 weeks after we seeded it. And we also did a single harvest, so it was like a whole thing, not breaking it off.
Yeah, Julie, are there varieties that are better for breaking off stems or single put?
It's funny because this is the second time this week someone's asked me this question, and I've never been asked that before ever. So I have no idea. And I asked our celery technician, and he has no idea either. His response was that Kelvin is like the most sort of uniform, strong, nicely colored, wide petioled variety. And so his thought was like, well, if you pick the nicest variety, that might just do well. But we don't trial for that, so I have no idea. Sorry to say.
Awesome. Anybody else on celery? Varieties they like?
We grow Marengo now, but it was not available last year, so I don't know if it's coming back or not.
Okay, let's move on. Allium? Onions and leeks.
I love Rosa di Milano as for a storage onion. She's my favorite of all time.
I definitely agree with you on that one. The fabulous storage onion.
We found Calibri holds up a long time, but I don't know if it's any longer than Patterson or any of the others of that type, but I think everybody kind of has their own favorite.
This isn't a varietal question, but Enya, did you want to speak about your experience of pushing back your transplanting date? Because I'm considering doing that because of pest pressure.
Yeah. So we were seeing really bad onion root maggots when we would transplant like the first week of April, and then in 2019 my fields were just really wet and I couldn't get into them, and so I didn't actually plant the onions out until I think May 18th, and we had no onion root maggots and everything grew fine and they did really super well. And so this year I seeded them, or I transplanted them. I'd have to double check, but I think I did like the first week of May, and again had really great success and no pest pressure.
I usually transplant middle, even a third week of May, and I harvest late July, early August, in nice onions. So yeah, I think it's easy to push that back and still get a good crop and dodge those things.
True for leeks too.
Yeah, I'm actually not transplanting my leeks until into June this year. I don't find there's much demand for them until mid-September. And it's just one less thing to deal with during that crunch.
Favorite leek varieties?
I don't know what you guys have been growing, but both Megaton has been dropped by the vendor. The breeder just decided to stop producing seed, which is like in the Northeast, that's the #1 leek variety. So that's sort of shocking. And also Lexton, which is the most cold tolerant leek that we sell, had a seed crop failure. So from my perspective, there's like big fiascos in the leek world. We have a bunch of alternative varieties that we're selling. So I'm really curious what you guys are growing. Like the ones that we are replacing Megaton with are called Jumper and Rally. Rally is basically the organic version. And they're both really different than Megaton. There's nothing like it. So I'm very curious to know what else you guys like.
I found Chinook is kind of like Megaton. I know where you're going to get that. but I had pretty good luck with that before I got destroyed by allium leaf miner.
Anyone else? I don't grow leeks, so can't really attribute.
I'm going to give a side note. I know this is way off topic of allium, but I just want to share this with you for people that are working on. I want to share with you that we grew basil this year, and we've always grown basil, but had tremendous success with devotion. And I'm going to give you specific details. We grew this crop, we seeded this crop, we did many things, but this particular one, I seeded it on June 1st. It was devotion. And we grew it outside. Digga, can you tell the spacing?
12-inch spacing.
12-inch spacing, 3 rows. That was three beds. Anyways, la lupier. We grew it outside first, but then it was in the same thing where our movable high tunnel was. So when we put the movable high tunnel over before extreme cold, so early September, because we had like this crazy frost, right? In early September. I'm gonna say we harvested off of that until I think November, early November.
Last week of October.
Last week of October. Digger can get his thing out because we sell it to fiddleheads. Great money maker for anybody who wants to do basil. Devotion. It does not have the flavor that Genovese has, but I'm going to just tell you it was a workhorse. So again, we seeded it in June 1st. We put it outside on fabric because in its own situation, because it doesn't like a lot of moisture, right? So if you put it in another field, you have to make sure you turn off your header lines if you have drip. But it was in its own field, and then we pulled the high tunnel over the top of it. It was a workhorse for us, moneymaker.
Those Rutgers varieties and Prospera are great.
That's a side note. I know it wasn't an allium, but I feel like we need to help each other out with some money makers. And
yeah, that was actually on the next topic. So this is kind of a catch-all. I mean, anything that hasn't been discussed, anything you want to discuss, you can, do right now. There are some basil comments in here too. So thanks for bringing that up. I just want to share with you my experience with basil. It's been interesting because we went from planting 3 rows to 2 rows to 1 row this year. And it was insane. When you plant 1 row, it still takes up the whole bed. Like it bushes out like this gigantic plant. So I feel like the more space you give it, the bigger it gets. And so I'm just going to go with single rows from now on, which is kind of unheard of, I think, but it worked out for us. So, and that was I've just been going with, I can't remember the name of the basil, but I'll type it in the comments. But
we planted, I think it was Rutgers Obsession. We interplanted in our high tunnel with the tomatoes. And we harvested from it all season. And it was just right at the end where it started getting affected by, I think it was downy mildew. And it was it was definitely a moneymaker for us this year, interplanting, and it saved space. So that was good.
Those 3 are really resistant to downy, and they taste way better than like Eleonora or any of the other Thai Genovese hybrids.
Totally. And I think Prospera tastes a little more Genovese-like than Devotion does, but it's worth trying all of them. And now there's a compact version of Prospera if you are doing bedding plants or if you're doing tips. So that's cool.
Yeah, sorry. Kirsten, what were you interplanting with?
Tomatoes. So in our high tunnel, just because we don't have a lot of space, we try and grow as much as we can in the space that we have. And we spaced our tomatoes out a little bit more in the high tunnel than we have in the past. And we were able to interplant with bunching onions and some head lettuce and some basil. So it worked out really, really well. They were all compatible. Nothing took away from anything else. So we're going to keep doing it. It just worked. And the tomatoes gave them enough shade so that they didn't bolt really until towards the end when they were really stressed out.
Do you guys ever have issues with beetles just devouring your basil? I'll have like within 4 days, like 50% of the crop will just be devoured.
Those are the night flying scarabs. There's a product you can get called Beetle Gone. It's certified organic. I'll plug my friend Joe at Green Earth Agriculture. It's a BT, but it's a silver bullet BT just for scarabs, and it evaporates them. Japanese beetles, the Asiatic garden beetles, those little brown ones that come up, and they, the damage is there. And then overnight, your plants get shredded. I've used that, and it smokes them. And like I said, certified organic. It's not that expensive. If you message me, I can give you the name of the joint, or I'll put it in chat.
So if you don't use that, which Ian, I totally agree, and thank you, we're gonna look at that. We didn't use that this year. I do a crop walk every Sunday, and I do feel that it's kind of gross squishing them, but we just went out and squished those suckers and then took off bad leaves and then dig up 1 second. We hung some pheromone traps, and that worked really well. But yeah, that sucks. But for basil, because it's such a money crop for us, it's worth me walking through 3 beds that are 40 feet and saying, what's the pressure, and sending either myself or an employee out to squish those buggers.
I find that the best use for it is the night flyers, because don't come out until it's dark, and I hate them. And they just appear, and then it's like magical damage. You don't know where it comes from. I agree, though. The Japanese beetles, I tend to do that by hand too, like on the eggplant.
I'll just also share as part of the other category that I grew some sweet corn this year for the first time ever, because who has room for corn? But it was amazing. So I'd highly recommend giving it a try.
What variety?
2 different organic varieties from High Mowing, both bicolor. There's all these different types of, I learned a lot about corn. They both came out really tasty. People said it was the best corn they've ever had. No real difference between the varieties, but just really fun doing something new, and who doesn't love corn?
Did you plant those? I don't know what size your beds and stuff are, but how did you plant those in your beds?
They were transplanted. We did 2 rows per bed, and I just did 2 beds that were each 200 feet long. So we planted half of each of the beds, so 4 rows total for cross-pollination. And then 2 weeks later, another 4 100-foot long beds. So it was very little amount. Definitely people just got a taste of it. If I had more space, I would devote more acreage to it. And they could we did them at 1 foot spacing because I didn't really, again, know exactly what I should do. And I think I could do it at 6-inch spacing and still get a good crop.
Did you get any earworm damage, Susan?
Yeah, I didn't know what to expect from European corn or I had very little worm damage. We didn't spray them or do anything to them other than side dress once. Very little worm damage, on occasion, but not much at all. And people warned me about raccoons. just taken them all off. We had no animal damage on them either, except like towards the very end. There was some loss, but it was very minimal.
Hey, another, I'm just gonna give you like, if you're needing to do like a moneymaker crop, if you wholesale and people take a lot of cilantro during the summer, I'm just gonna share with you that we changed to black fabric. Oh, we did plastic. Honey says, AKA says that we did it in plastic and 6 inches apart, sweetie? Quick. No, we changed it to 6. 6 inches, 3 across. And I'm like bad with all that stuff. But anyways, we transplanted it and just, it's a clean crop at that point because we also put fabric on the side of our bed. So, all that dirt and that soil that gets up on that when it rains and it flops over, it's just an easy, quick harvest, bunching and harvesting. That's we're kind of changing over to fabric, and it's not a variety. I'm just sharing that when you need a couple money makers, the basil and the cilantro were heavy hitters for us this year.
Hey, did you guys shade them as seedlings? You remember?
The cilantro, no, we just, we hardened them off. We put them outside, we hardened them off, put them in the field. And nope, we might have put remay on them in the fall just to keep like some heavy frost off. And
Okay.
at least
How
2.
How many plants per hole? Just one?
About, no. About like
Okay.
when we plant them in, we plant them in 72s, and we probably plant like 10 to 15 seeds per 72. And because it's a nice one whole plant is, slice sometimes at that point, bundle and go. It's super, super easy. We use Calypso at this point, let it grow tall. And we sell, I think Digga, sweetie, do we sell about 40 bundles to Fiddleheads a week? So, a local grocery store.
Hey, T, I found some of the chefs and even some of like the high-end retail places.
Yeah.
They like the roots on because the roots are used in a variety of other cooking things.
Sure, if we ask for that, we could do that. But I'm just saying that, for
Is it easier just to clip them for you guys than to wash the roots?
I love selling to chefs.
But yeah, it's just a slice. It's a clean harvest, and you can get 2 cuttings from it. So I'm like, everything to me is $1,000 row. 100-foot bed should, for the most part, unless it's for our CSA specifically, should be producing $1,000. And that is a good money maker. I'm just sharing with you a clean, easy crop.
Hey, that reminds me. So yeah, definitely cilantro is a huge moneymaker for us too. I was having trouble with dill this year. I don't know exactly what it was, but it's some kind of disease that turns the leaves brown. And I just wonder if anyone had an issue.
Cercospora or Alternaria.
Okay, yeah, that's what I thought because it was next to the carrots, and it, the carrots just kind of transfer that over. Okay, I don't think there are resistant varieties, right, Julie?
No, but the faster the variety, the better it'll do. So like Teddy's a little faster.
Green sleeves too.
Change to Teddy's, slice and go.
Yeah, it was next to carrots all season, so I had no luck this year.
I think Yoko, what you're saying though about spacing is that's one thing that I've observed visiting farms this year is that people, especially organic growers, are really playing around with giving things more space for airflow. Mm-hmm. So that, I'm reminded because of the dill and thinking about foliar disease, but I've definitely been noticing people trying wider spacing and saying this is really changing the dynamics here.
I put 10 to 15 seeds per cell for dill, so it's, I don't know how to make it dinner.
Right. For spacing, just another tidbit, we went with our eggplant now, we do single row. How many feet apart, honey? 2 feet apart. And every Monday we do a fish emulsion. I have an employee, pouring fish emulsion, root drench into it. Heavy producers, again, we plant it on fabric on the side, easy to harvest because you harvest it right into the middle. You go and pick it up, blah, blah, blah. It's a long story, but fast, easy crop now. When it was planted more, like 2 across, it was like a jungle. So for employees, for us, which is me usually harvesting it, I'm a happy person. Just a tidbit.
All right, so it's 5:03 now. I know we haven't covered all the topics on this slide. I don't know if you guys want to stick around for another 10 minutes to discuss these, or end it now. What do you guys think?
Yoko, Kirsten mentioned to me you were interested in some of the chicory and radicchio stuff, and I grew like 1,200 row feet this year.
I was gonna personally ask you if we didn't get to chicory.
Can you give us the highlights though? I want highlights.
Well, Benifine endive is friggin' fantastic. Curlessi, the leaves are a little too big. You gotta have, people will buy it, but Benifine for a fine leaf frisee, I sell it as a whole head. I think it's bred to be cut, but I shade it a little bit sometimes in the heat, but it doesn't bolt. It's beautiful. Tip burn, and if you leave any of them in too long, a squirrel or endive, they'll tip burn, but if you harvest it the right window, it was fantastic. I was picking over 1 pound heads, and I just picked the last of it 2 days ago. Had been undercover.
Same experience with the Benifine. It was incredible, and yeah, huge heads, lasted a really long time, and the wholesale markets loved it.
Yeah,
grew on a lot of people at farmers markets too.
What did you space yours at? I do 3 at 10 inches because it likes to be close, but some people do bigger.
We did 3 at 6, and they did they got a little, as we harvested the ones that were really packed in there, filled out a bit, but do
you have any bottom rot? Actually, oddly, I get earwig problems in the fall with them. They get in there and do damage, but
we had just a little bit of bottom rot. It wasn't a huge problem.
Yeah, it's a great variety.
And then for the Escarole, Eros, I thought was almost equally as good for us.
I use a variety. I think Harris carries called Full Heart. I think that's one of those things where everybody finds their type and they run with it. I think they're all pretty on equal footing.
We have a baby leaf chicory this year. I'm sort of curious if anyone will be interested in that. It's really, really pretty, but I'm like, is there a market for that? Odia.
Chicories mature at such different rates. It's one of the interesting things. Here's the radicchio. You'll harvest radicchio on the same seeding over 2 weeks sometimes. So a micro mix, you'd really have to dial in the variety so that it's not, it would be hard, I think, to get a consistent. I don't know. I've seen some of them work. I know some people that grow them and work really well.
Hey, Ian, was that the Full Heart Batavian, whatever? Was that what you were talking about?
It's that. I mean, those heads are up to 2 pounds. They're massive.
No, but that's what you were talking about, the Full Hearts.
I think it's Batavian. I'm not sure.
They all bolted. They bolted on us really fast.
I had 1 or 2 sets that bolted early, and late it's good. I think I'm gonna have to cover them in the middle of the summer or give them a little.
Yeah, I think that was the problem. Is we had this year we had the spring that was like super hot, and then the temperature just totally tanked. Right. Then it got hot again, then it dropped, and most of our brassicas, lettuce that we had in the ground, endive, escarole, they all just said screw this and went right to flower.
Your soil moisture is so important, because if your soil gets really hot, all those things will trip. So
Yeah, we
and
got to
it
get better
didn't even
with
help. It didn't help us. So, and we watered the heck out of it.
Natasha, which is an escrow, consistently does well for us.
I've looked at that too.
Yeah, us as well.
Because I still get a little too much tip burn on Full Heart, and there's another one called Alliance, I think that came out from a couple of the companies. But again, I think they're all. Let's put it this way: I've never seen an Endive, for example, as good as Benifine, and Curlessi is great too if people want big leaf, but they both get so big. But I think Escrow is kind of a find your dance partner and stay with it.
Ian, do you just sell that, like, how do you sell that?
The Endive.
Yeah.
Just I try to get my heads kind of uniform in size, and typically, I mean, the Benifine is really consistent, and then I sell it just cut at the base, dunk it, and it dunks. It's easier than lettuce. It's way sturdier. You just go and make sure you make the cut. You don't want to cut into the actual stem attachments because it'll kind of feather off. Because again, I think it's supposed to be cut for loose leaf. As long as you give it a little bit of a handle at the bottom to dunk it, and I just sell them by the head. I sell tons of it wholesale because it keeps. I just had a friend of mine who runs a restaurant pull a head of escrow out that I had sold him a month ago, and he showed me a picture of it, and it was pristine. So they keep a long time in the right conditions.
We have a really big issue with pill bugs in our Endive. But then again, we have an issue with like everything. So I don't know if that's just us. But
Yeah,
I don't know. I
there's
just can't keep them
unique
out.
bugs for them.
What?
There's just bugs I don't see in other things I see in Endive.
I think it's because it's so. It's just so dense. It's so compacted, and I think it just is like a safe haven for, the pill bugs and all the other stuff.
Salt marsh caterpillar, which I never see on any. Actually, I get more than I would expect, but it's a nuisance in most places. I get a ton of it. And they love chicory. Deer love radicchio. If people don't already know that and want to grow radicchio, deer, they hone in on it. I've never seen deer go after something like radicchio. They just leave lettuce and broccoli by itself, and it's destroyed my radicchio crop last year. So if anyone wants to grow radicchio, this is a side note. Make sure you protect it.
That's a good tip.
Anybody else want to comment on any of these topics?
I just have a question overall. Maybe Julie can just make a note of it about just overall seed availability for this year. I know you talked about it with carrots and stuff, but I've heard some people just talking about that because of everything with the pandemic, and it was just a really crappy summer, unstable all over the United States, about seed availability just as a whole.
Yeah. It's easy to talk about in a broad way and harder to talk about in a specific way, but I would, in November, Johnny's saw about, twice the demand this year than compared to the November previous, right? So like twice as much, not 10% more. So we're just seeing unprecedented demand for seeds. And I think that a number of growers had a pretty good growing season this last year, despite the pandemic. Especially if they had direct markets, they actually sold out their CSA for the first time in 5 years. So people are coming in early for seed this year because they have money to spend. So I'm seeing like a lot more people buying seeds in December than they usually do. So I would say that it's a really smart idea, especially if you have particular crops that are essential for the success of your business, to buy them early this year. Given all of that, Johnny's has tried really hard to procure more seed, to have more substitute varieties, knowing that some things are just going to sell out. And we're going to do our best, but it feels sort of like riding a roller coaster from the seed end of things. So I would just suggest, it's not like we're going to run out of everything tomorrow, but I would suggest if there's specific things that you really need, to buy them early. And the other thing I'll say, and I hate to say this, I don't know if there's anyone left from Johnny's on this call, at some point, like what happened to us last year was the demand was so insane that we had to shut down home garden orders, and still there was like a 2-week delay. And I expect that's going to happen again this year, that there will be significant delays in shipping, just because we're a company run by humans. We can't fit that many humans in our warehouse without putting them at risk. We can't build a whole new warehouse between now and February. So I would say that's the other thing, is to think ahead about what you're going to need in February and March, and just plan on there being a 10-day delay in shipping. And that's probably true for all seed companies. It's definitely true for Johnny. So those are my warnings. Also, you know, like we feel like our work is essential, and we really badly want to provide everyone with the seeds they need to grow all this good food. So we're definitely thinking about it, how to serve you guys.
Julie, any crop failures that you know of that maybe we're unaware of yet? Insider trading?
Yeah, there's actually, I don't know if you guys subscribe to like you probably get more emails from Johnny's than you actually want. But there's an email going out in about a week that's like a limited quantities or seed failure email. So you can look for that in your email inbox. I would say the big things are Mokum carrots, rainbow carrot seed will be limited this year. Indigo radicchio will be limited. There's a couple sweet corn varieties that are going to be limited, like Catalyst and Kickoff. Newham's that's a lettuce, is gonna be limited. I'm afraid that Amara, I don't know if any of you grow that, summer green.
Ethiopian kale?
Say that again?
Is that the Ethiopian kale?
Yeah, I love that one. That's the Ethiopian kale. Let's see, Athena, cantaloupe is limited. Cortland onions are dropped, so Talon is the replacement. That's a big deal for some people. Looking at peppers, Carmen is going to be limited, but we'll have organic Carmen, so hopefully there'll be enough to go around.
Is Dia Vignon back in stock? I haven't checked.
It's not. The breeder dropped it, so which really sucks, because that's a really nice radish. But we have Nelson, which is a similar enough to get you through. That's all I can think of that's like really important. Cherry bomb tomato is going to be limited.
That's one of the prettiest cherry tomatoes I've ever seen.
It's pretty, and it's good tasting too. I hope I didn't talk too much, y'all. I could do this for 8 hours, and I really love hearing your opinions. So if you ever want to call me up and just have me listen and not share my opinions, I'm happy to listen. I'd love to know what you guys like, what you need from Johnny's, what, in terms of both breeding or seed availability, like that early red cabbage comment, that's the kind of stuff that I send it right back to our research team. And I say, people really need a nice early red cabbage, and they work a little harder looking for that. So your feedback is really crucial. And I just want to say, I appreciate all of your hard work and patience.
Hey, Julie, I got a question for you.
Yeah.
Can you send me your contact information? I just want to chat about some grafting stuff for tomatoes specifically.
I'll put my email and phone in the chat. I'm helping put together a tomato grafting webinar that for December 7th at 2 p.m. Because we're not selling grafted plants anymore, and so I'm hoping to get information out there to help people do it themselves.
Wait, this today, 7th or?
Oh, did I say December? I meant January 7th. Isn't today almost over? Oh my God.
Julie, I don't know if you hear anything on the wind with this. Are they any closer to getting rootstock for eggplant grafting, verticillium resistant rootstock?
Yeah,
that's like the golden child.
Yeah, they are. I should. It's not something that I have looked into much, but I've been doing some research on vegetable grafting in general, and I know that they have one at least. but that's kind of all I know. But I could look into it if you wanted me to.
All right, well, if there aren't any other comments or questions, I think we're gonna wrap it up. And yeah, thank you so much, Julie, for joining us and sharing your wisdom.
Nice to see you all.
Yeah, and thank you everyone for joining and sharing your experiences. Hopefully we'll send out an email with notes and how to access the recording and maybe some feedback about how we can improve this going forward. So yeah, thanks so much, everybody.
This was great. Thank you so much.
It was awesome.
Thanks for organizing it.
Yeah, this is great. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Take care, everybody.
He's still here. MC's still here. All right, so did you, yeah, maybe